if you've been on the internet for about as a while as I have been, you've probably been made aware about a situation that was going on with a YouTuber by the name of MamaMax. You probably remember him, where I mentioned about a video from him, where he essentially, wanted to call out Critical and call out a lot of these other creators for wanting to bring awareness to a accusation of this guy named Candid Gerard Davis, who was being accused of being a pedophile and being like a vampire werewolf thing. I probably forgot I mentioned that in there for the most part, but Max very much wanted to have like his reach out there, and I criticize him for doing a lot of this stuff that pressuring other creators is not exactly a good thing. It doesn't help anybody, and there's not much that you can there's barely much that he was able to even do, because he's not exactly showing much evidence, because of in his own video, and putting down one situation for another situation is not also good in order to even help most of your cause because of it. And that was essentially the whole video, and that has evolved to something a lot more serious and a lot more potential. There's a lot of videos out there that have been going over this and have been detailing very much a lot of it. If you really much want to get the whole catch up and the whole thing, I recommend the two videos that very much happened were released at the exact same day, which was Lerix's video and FPS's Diesel video, detailing very much everything that was going on with MamaMax, how he became to be, and very much the whole recent thing that has been happening to him ever since then. From the future over here, I also want to recommend, and I'm also going to be linking down both Muta video and Nicholas DeOrio's video on the whole thing that's happened with MamaMax. They both released these things very much at least yesterday at the time of this recording. As of right now, it's January 18th. So very much on January 17th, both of their videos would have been released. As of right now, I've checked both of those videos out, and they are, and honestly, all four of them are very much essential to very much view every single one of them to get a perspective of just how just get the whole thing if you very much are interested in seeing this. And a lot of it, for at least what I saw, because I'm not going to go over the whole thing, it's this is a lot to DV, so I'm not going to go into very much serious detail about it, but I am going to be mentioning the most recent thing that has happened to him, which is his apology. Because after his whole thing, and very much him getting other people and other friends that have been trying to tell him hey, what the way you're going about this is completely and utterly wrong. You literally don't have much of evidence. It's been proven otherwise that you barely have anything to make corroborate for an actual story. And we've been telling you that you should work with the law enforcement, because when apparently he was actually doing a lot of this stuff, he actually was not working with any of the law enforcement because of it, because he doesn't trust the police or anything of that. He even went as far as to even say that ChatGPT gives better legal advice than an actual lawyer, which I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think I would trust AI for any type of advice when it comes to something of this caliber and something of this seriousness. So he very much ended up recently making an accountability and an apology, and this is very different because this one is not even remotely of an apology to begin with. This is literally more or less just him wanting to try and skirt the lines of, ever taking accountability whatsoever. And I very much just want to go over this because this apology just says a lot about him as an actual person than it actually, reflects on it.
So I just completed a 30-minute video called Silencing All Survivors that addresses pretty much everything. It addresses criticisms. It addresses my approach. It includes apologies. It includes a call to action on Camden. A little bit of information about everything. I showed it to some trusted friends and the survivors. Some people loved it. Some people had a few criticisms, and then some people hated it. and told me not to upload it. I've got people telling me just talk about the case and nothing else. I've got people telling me just address the criticisms. I've got people telling me just apologize. I feel like I'm being pulled in every which way. And no matter how hard I try, I cannot make everyone happy. I'm trying to prioritize the survivors over myself. But then where do I put like the general public in that priority list? It's very difficult. I feel like I'm in an impossible position where I just can't seem to do the right thing. And I'm sorry.
He says that he's in this impossible position, mainly because that he was the one that was like decided to claim that Camden Davis is a pedophile. Now, I don't have any research or background knowledge to know exactly, if Camden Davis is an actual pedophile. In fact, there's barely much of a digital footprint, just aside from just his name, his face, and that's basically it. Everything else, he's practically like a ghost. But the reason that he even says any of these things is mainly because of, like, in his initial video, he showed basically barely any evidence, and that we should just take his word at him for it. And I don't think I need to say that, when you very much, exclaim that somebody is a pedophile, you shouldn't, you should be able to, like, have a bunch of evidence corroborated to make sense of, like, yeah, this person is a pedophile because of this reason, and this reason, which also calls back to this reason. Like that's not like something you should just play fire with. That's a serious thing that you should 100% make sure that it's concrete, that it's like it's undeniable. It's like it's proof. At least it's proof. I was about to say undeniable proof, but it doesn't always need to be perfect. You need to at least have proof of something, anything that can actually at least make these claims seem like validated in some sort of way. And he provided none of that. He locked all of his evidence behind like NDAs and all that, and but barely any of the stuff that he even has are just screenshots, which I trust the word of, at least for Muta, when he also found out about this stuff and was very much with very much trying to tell MamaMax hey, a lot of this stuff is not exactly actual proof. I recommend doing this doing an actual law, doing cross your I's and T's, and actually speak with lawyers, multiple lawyers, to give different legal advice about this stuff. I promise I'm not trying to go through so in depth of it, but there's so much about this that very much has has a lot of detail into it. So I recommend the videos from Lerix and FPS Diesel. They're honestly the better ways of catching up with who MamaMax is, and what he's kind of just been up to with in recent days. And it's just he put this on himself to do this, and I don't know as to why he is being shocked by this. You put the priority on you. You literally announced this and did all this, yet you're acting surprised about it.
I'm sorry I can't make all of you happy. I'm sorry to Charlie for dragging him into a case that is not necessarily his fight. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to my audience who don't even know what the heck is going on. I'm uploading shorts, I'm doing live streams, I'm doing weird ass videos, just trying to find the remaining survivors of Camden Davis. That has always been the goal for this awareness campaign. And while it's worked in some respect, it's also caused a lot of issues. I don't want to cause issues. I want to resolve these issues. I don't want any I don't want beef with anyone. Like I want to communicate openly. I'm trying to communicate with my peers. And I'm trying to listen to dissenting voices. I'm trying. And I'm trying to listen to voices I trust too. And every single person is telling me something different, and I don't know what to do. And that's why I've been asking for help. People say, just wait for law enforcement to do something. But we've waited 7 years, and they haven't done anything. So we decided to just go public with it and put eyes on him. And people wanted evidence, so we've been inviting people to our little server where we have the evidence. But then people don't want to listen to the survivors when they're in there and just look at the evidence and conclude it's nothing. People are making all these public attacks, not platforming any of us, not wanting to talk to the survivors themselves. And when people do talk to the survivors, they're getting attacked just because they're transgender.
Max, where in the ever-loving shit did anybody was going to say that they were being attacked for being trans? I don't think they were being attacked because they were trans. They were most being criticized, at least for the concreteness of most of their stories. I don't doubt that most of them, at least were actually done horrible things by Camden Gerard Davis, and I very much want to believe their stories for it. But you're making it almost completely impossible when you go as far as to try and dox Camden's mother and brother, say their full name out loud, which, by the way, you claim that it's not PII of a form of doxing, when one Google search would literally tell you otherwise, that yeah, it is a form of doxing. So you can't say that and act as if you didn't know about that. You barely knew anything about law, so I'm not surprised that you didn't even know that apparently saying someone's full name is a form of doxing, even though it's out in the public. You still shouldn't do it. So I'm not editing anything out because of the video. He takes long pauses of silence for the most part. That's why a lot of it seems I'm editing a lot of this stuff. I'm literally just cutting out a lot of the silence in it, so I'm not doing anything. I'm not hiding anything from it. It's literally just a full-fledged of silence.
This has been very difficult. And I know if I could have just started with making everything clear from the beginning, maybe this could have all been avoided. And I take accountability for that. I just thought that if people wanted to know what was going on, they would just go to the podcast. And we put the podcast on Spencer's channel to help her build her own platform, because survivors need more than just a voice. They need financial help. They need psychological help. They need medical care. They need a loving family. They need a roof over their head. Survivors need a lot. And I've been trying to provide that. And it's not enough. And it feels like when we reach out for help, people just want to use that opportunity to attack us, to hate on me. It's hard. This is really hard. Let's just start from the beginning. I met Spencer. She told me what happened to her. I told her I was busy with other projects, but if you need me to hand this to someone else, I will. She said, no, I want you. And so, a few years later, I finally came back and I was like, okay, are you ready? And we did the podcast. And while I was there listening to her, that's when I realized this is going to evolve into something much more. Like, originally, I just wanted to do a podcast where we platform survivors and they tell their story. But you can't just tell your story anymore. Now you need concrete evidence. Now you need to go to law enforcement multiple times. Now you need to consult with lawyers. Like, we can't just listen to survivors when they're screaming for help.
I know what I'm about to say may sound like the most coldest and the most, like, hardest thing to, like, swallow, but in this day and age, for the countless amount of, like, people that are very much throwing out allegation with, like, barely any proof of, like, anything else happening out there, we're no longer in that age of, like, believing a lot of these victims outright the gate. We unfortunately do live in a world as of now where a lot of information and a lot of misinformation can be spread so easily that you can believe it as fact. And I don't think it's a wrong thing to more or less say that they want actual proof that this thing very much has happened before of it, because no one should at least want to doubt, like, the survivors of people that have been gone through this. But it's also, I think, at least, not wrong to say that they want, some more evidence and more, like, pieces of the puzzle in order to fit all of this. Because if people just believe word of narrative right out of the gate, we could just potentially be going around just falsely accusing people out there that could be completely innocent in all this, and people who did make these false allegations could just walk away scot-free and just start doing a lot of these things out of the worst of their hearts. That's not a world I want to, like, live in entirely. I want to believe victims that do actually have these real stories, that they do matter because of it. But the way that you even approach any of these things has not been helpful in the slightest. In fact, it's been a detriment to it because of how you presented all these things. You barely showed any evidence. You locked it behind an NDA. You said that ChatGPT gives out much more legal advice than an actual lawyer. You didn't even consult the law or any lawyers before you did any of these investigations because of it. When these type of things even happen, you have to work with, like, at least something like law enforcement, at least have, like, an understanding of the law in order to do these things. One person that very much does this to such an exception is Skeeter Gene. Like, Skeeter Gene, he has a record of very much making sure that he gets a lot of these, like, creeps and predators off the streets and gets them to jail 100%. He very much does upload them on YouTube, but he works within the bounds of the law in order to actually, help out with it, very much make sure it's, like, it's 100% that it doesn't make any type of mistakes for it. He does his due diligence, and he does his research way beforehand before doing anything else. And, like, that's something I actually, like, respect of Skeeter Gene for it, because he does his due diligence, he does his research, he makes sure he does things before he, like, makes it all 100%. He has that knowledge, he has the foresight to do it. Except with Max, who was just like, hey, these are just these stories, matter to a lot of people out there. We should be able to platform them. I'm all here about, like, wanting to hear about, people's stories about, like, their whole thing. They should be able to get, like, all the attention that they have. But the only thing that very much a lot of people are asking is that you should, get some actual, the proof. Share a lot of the proof. Share a lot of these things out there for people to be aware of. Because if you aren't going to be able to do any of that, no one's going to believe you, like, at all. And it's only going to hurt more people out there who actually do have actual stories, and they're not going to be believed by anybody because of it. You peer pressured other creators into saying that, if they don't, like, help you at all, and they just don't believe your word at any of these things, then they're also, like, in support of, like, the abuse of children. No one at all should be pressured into that type of, like, thinking because of it. Like, nobody is, like, trying to say that they are in support of any of these things. They are critiquing you. In fact, this entire thing, like, I know I'm being, like, very emotional about this, but this is, like, something that genuinely has actually pissed me off as much more of this, like, has gone through and as much more as I followed. The very thing that even, like, pissed me off is that it's not even longer about, like, the whole thing that was, like, Cameron to Gerard Davis and, like, even, like, the survivors of the cult. This is just now all on Max and just how he even handled this whole thing to begin with, which I think is much more of a detriment to even the survivors to begin with, because they no longer have a voice on like Max's channel for the most part. It's all been just like as like a side thing to more speculate, and like all the attention is just focused on Max and Max alone, and he has no one but to blame himself for this entire thing. He started all of this with this, and it's now even came to recent light that much of the other stuff that he probably did also accuse of other people are actually now being brought into question.
So, instead of addressing all the random rumors that people make up and responding to criticism, talking about the wrongdoings of other influencers, I'm just going to take accountability for my actions and correct them starting now. Let's just start fresh. First, we need to keep finding the remaining survivors. We know they are out there, and we need help finding them. If you don't want to help, you don't have to. But if you do, please reach out to me. We will invite you to our server, where all of the survivors and all of the evidence is growing. I hope you can all understand my position. We are living in a world where survivors scream for help and no one wants to listen. There are children living in literal hell, and we can't hear them.
I think one of the worst thing that he probably does is pull this shit. I'm not gonna go over like the segment because it's basically just the survivors at least giving their most of like some of their statements about candidate Gerard Davis, and he uses that in order to guilt trip everybody else into feeling as if we should believe him right off the bat. This is the shit that I think pisses me off the most. Like, when I very much was seeing this actually put me into an actual fury for what he actually just did because of it. How in the hell do you say that you take accountability for your own actions and your own fuck up, yet take it all back in the exact same video? You literally did not learn a single thing because of it. And the fact that you even remotely thought that this was even a good idea in there shows to me that you probably don't even care about the whole thing in the first place. Like, what that actually pisses me off so much to an unbearable amount of the degree that the fact that you wanted to try and get away from this, to have these other statements from these other victims to try and make it feel like as if we're going to be, I felt bad for criticizing about it. Like, I'm not even playing the full, like, the whole thing. I'm skipping that entirely because I don't think most people should at least hear it for the most part. If you want to hear it for yourself, the apology is still up for the most part. But it's just like, that's just a level of like disgusting that actually pisses me off. By the end of the video, he starts to call out candidate Gerard Davis again, only this time that he said that he's going to take a different approach to the whole thing, and that not every influencer and creator is going to be peer pressured into making a whole thing about it that they don't need to, and then Max is going to be perfectly fine with. And then at the end, someone that I'm not exactly familiar with, because people are saying that like it's Spencer, but I don't think it is. They don't look alike at all, at least body wise. And it always just like ends with him essentially getting like a hug of like assurance for it, and that's basically the entirety of the video. This one does like barely even do anything to remotely apologize of any way, and shows zero lack of accountability for what he has been doing. Everybody has been against him and been criticizing him for the way that he does things and for the lack of actual due diligence that he even displays. And the fact of that he very much was that he showed himself in this entire video leads me to believe that he didn't even bother listening. He learned nothing. He learned no lesson because of it. And that actually like just like it pisses me off. Like I'm still not over that whole segment where he tried to guilt trip with like the other victims for it. Like that actually just like pisses me off so much because of it. I have like I know I said in like the last video that like I hope things get better for like the whole thing, and that Max should just like like at least trying to like do better because of it. And now that has completely and utterly changed, because now I don't even know as to whether or not that like the whole thing that is happening with Camden Gerard Davis is like real or not. And I'm hoping that like there's a better outcome to like make sense of all this. But Max has completely lost any amounts of respect that I even remotely thought I had within him. I only was made aware of him like in the previous video. I only was made aware of him because like the pick a side thing that was happening on YouTube, and then like very much saw like him being a guest on like the Summer Ori podcast. And as of where it stands as of now, it hasn't been looking good for him at all. And to see so much of this stuff like even like coming out from it has been some of the most worst and like most baffling things I have ever seen of like any kind. Even when you look at the comments of the apology, which if you have a dislike YouTube extension on, it's like fucking atrocious on there. Like nobody has accepted this apology at all. Everybody very much was commenting on there, and most of them are like their own like survivors of their own rights, and they even very much disliked and were disappointed and ashamed by this response to this whole thing. And not even once did he mention anything that was also like at least mentioning of this whole thing. Or like he only apologized to Charlie because this all started with when he tried to call him out and pressure him into doing any of these things. And he not once apologized to any of the other people that he's also spoken with, that he's very much gotten advice from, and that he ignored because of. And the fact that this even was like thought it was like okay to do so, when countless of creators have been criticizing him, telling him to like stop doing this, and that these survivors should be taken on to a different person other than MamaMax. Like it should be like I'm in support of in that now, that these survivors, if they are both telling their stories, should not go to MamaMax for it. Sorry that like it sounds like I'm much more frustrated within this, but it is it's like something that like it's something that like I know that I don't have much of like an experience in, but from very much seeing all this and how it very much even played out, it has been like actually frustrating to even like watch as this whole thing very much just falls apart for it. And that I very much made a video about MamaMax a little while before, so I thought I must be at least aware that like I have been following this whole thing all the way through. And like I said, for the third time, watch Lerix's video, watch FPS Diesel's video about there. I'm linking them both in the description. And that's basically about the video. Bye bye.